All right, well, welcome back. I'm Chris Brown, Associate Publisher at Automotive Fleet. Today's webinar is titled Driving Performance Across Trade Fleets, Vehicles and Upfit Standardization Steps, Strategies, and Best Practices. And I am super excited for the subject matter expertise we have on tap for this subject. We've got Charles Matthew, Assistant Director of Order and Upfit at Merchants Fleet. Matthew St. Peter, Associate Upfit Engineer at Merchants Fleet. We've got Drew Snow, Fleet Account Exec from Adrian, and Ron McGuigan, Fleet Manager at Turnpoint Services. Thank you, audience, for joining us today. We've got some slides to run through real quick, and then really the meat of this is going to be the great discussion we're all going to have. And I just want to say, hey, audience out there, you know the drill. We've got the chat box. We've got questions. That's how you enter the questions into the chat box. We definitely want you to be part of this discussion. So please tee them up for us. And at the last 20 minutes or so, we're going to really get into the Q&A. So, okay, let's set the stage with a few slides here. So really, we're talking about larger fleets that have the complexity of multi-locations. And let's face it, we've all got multiple brands, right? I mean, the portfolios are wide and vast in terms of what type of vehicles we're running. And obviously, upfit configurations will vary accordingly. And certainly, it's disparate fleets in disparate states and locations across the country. So that's really what we're getting at for this. If we could move to the next slide. I mean, listen, we all know what fleet fragmentation does, right? I mean, it increases costs, it slows technician onboarding and productivity, it limits visibility across your organization, and it really makes it hard to scale. And we'll talk about how Ron is actually scaling his fleet in a minute. Next slide. So we're going to talk about standardization. I mean, obviously the goal is to standardize, but how do you get there? I mean, how do you strategically select a limited collection of vehicle makes, models, upfit, and configurations that really work for your organization, that create a repeatable structure that allows you to become proactive versus reactive and support growing your fleet and your business? And next slide. And certainly we're going to be talking about the benefits here. I mean, you're going to get lower upfit costs. You can onboard folks faster. Safety is going to be improved, right? When you've got less makes and models and intricacies to worry about. And certainly your inventory is going to be run a lot smoother. Let's get to the next slide. And certainly, we all know the financial benefits, right? I mean, it's going to be great for your techs and the reduced labor hour. It's going to unify your cost structure, and really, the goal is to be more productive. So let's get to slide 8. And standardization, again, it helps you scale. You can integrate new brands faster. You can have much more predictable costs, and your leadership gets a lot more visibility and control into your process. So let's get to slide 9, and then so we're going to be talking about this in the discussion, but we are going to be talking about how you review your existing fleet specs, how you're going to gather driver feedback, and Ron's got some feedback there. It's really about building what we call a gold standard configuration. Some may need or want to execute a pilot program, others not, but really the end goal is to implement this on a large scale. And yeah, so we're going to talk standardization best practices and really how to be patient and trust the process. And really, change management is not to be underestimated, folks. And we're going to get into that. So, all right, let's get into why we're all here. The discussion that we're going to have between the 5 of us. And I want to start with Ron Ron, tell us about TurnPoint. What does TurnPoint do? And tell us a little bit about the fleet.
So good afternoon, everyone. So TurnPoint Services is a consolidator. We're a PE-backed consolidator. We started in 2016 with one brand in the Louisville area. From that point, we've acquired, right now we're at 60 companies across the U.S., running approximately 5,000 vehicles out there. I've been with TurnPoint for almost 5 years now. When I came on board, there was a mix of different vehicle manufacturers, upfit processes, how they got done, where they got done, where the purchasing was done. It was, as you could imagine, trying to herd cats. So, that was one of my goals when I first got here, was to help standardize, make sure that the process flowed smoothly for everyone, put a standard in place, so that if someone went into the back of a vehicle when they were, working in Massachusetts, if for some reason their family moved to California and they jumped on board with one of our companies in California, they could go into the back of the same vehicle and know, hey, I know this is exactly where this part is going to be. So that's a huge piece of the standardization. And if it works in one place, it should definitely be able to work in the other. When you're bringing a lot of companies together, there's a lot of, hey, my idea is the best. So, we've kind of gone through that process of figuring out, what is the best practice, what is the best setup, bringing a team together internally to help with that.
Wow. Okay. And I don't want this to be lost on our audience. I mean, you are acquiring, is it really 15 to 20 businesses a year?
Yes.
This is what PE does, right? Okay.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. We were 24 companies, 1,600 vehicles when I joined in 2021. And now we're sitting at 60 companies, a little over 5,000 vehicles today.
Okay. Well, first, let's talk about how you work with merchants, and then we'll certainly get into how you work with Adrian and how it all kind of works together. But Who What Merchants wants to start with, like what actually happens behind the scenes when you're trying to build this spec. Call it a gold standard spec.
Yeah, I can certainly jump on that.
Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically behind the scenes, you're working to translate fleet operational needs, driver feedback, and safety regulations into a spec that meets the day-to-day operations of a business. When you get into the nitty-gritty of the specs, you're trying to make sure weight distributions are properly accounted for. If the business wants it, you're running pilot builds, and then you're partnering with an upfitter who you can trust and know can execute at a larger scale.
Okay, great. And then Drew, from Adrian's position, where do you jump into this process?
Yeah, so from our side of things, we try to get into the mix, obviously, as early as possible so that we can really work through and discuss all the details of everything that needs to happen. But from where I sit, my role overall is to work with my team to help, large multi-location companies with fleets that are widespread. And our goal is exactly what we're discussing here today, to help standardize and create solutions that are repeatable and scalable from an outfit perspective. So, once the decision is made on the direction of the fleet and what types of vehicles they're going to use, that's when we start to collaborate as a group. We all get together and we start discussing what's going in those vehicles, what's the best practices are for that standardization, and then we start to implement things from there.
Okay. And Ron, maybe you can walk us down that path of standardization, or did you want to jump in, Charles? I think you were about to say something.
Oh, I just want to do a quick roundup of how we support. I know Matt talked about the specification standpoint. Acquisitions from a merchant's perspective, we also support Ron from an order to delivery, which is my favorite two words in the industry. What that means is we take every possible point of friction out of the process between when Ron places his order and when the driver actually has his keys in hand. So that comes with the spec standardization that we're talking about, but we also work across all of our OEM relationships, our Upfit partners like Adrian, and clients like Ron to coordinate the entire timeline. And we layer in data, planning, and partnership to make sure nothing falls through the cracks. And as we go through the slide, we'll kind of highlight what those are. Back to you, Chris.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. So let's just get back to Ron and really kind of walk down this process of deciding really what was truly essential in the spec versus just kind of personal preferences for the techs out in the field. How did you get at that?
Yeah, so again, this is a true partnership. You can buy shelving, you can buy vehicles anywhere, but we look at it from a true partnership standpoint, and building that partnership through merchants and a relationship with Adrian Steele. We work with them to say, okay, here's a basic, they'll come to us and say, here's a basic HVAC. It has tank racks, it has a ladder rack on it. Here's, a standard package, has some shelving, has some bins. What do we need to do to it? And then we have an internal team that we've selected from across the country to help us figure out what exactly is that right setup. Does it need to have more bins? Does it need more shelving? Do we need tank racks? Now we're in an era where there's a new refrigerant, so we've had to add A2L cabinets for a new refrigerant, and that refrigerant needs to be stored differently. So it's a back and forth to get that base design done, with feedback from, again, merchants who's doing it for multiple customers, Adrian who's doing it across the country, and our internal feedback, and make sure that we include things, that we specify, like triangle kit, fire extinguisher, first aid kit. Those things aren't necessarily spec and everything, but our safety team drives that. So we want to make sure that we're covering that and we're not having to go out and do that after the process. So we want to make sure that the vehicle arrives, it's what we expect, and we can just put a driver in and go out the door. And that relationship, again, with merchants and Adrian's feedback, hey, we have some of our, customers that put X, Y, or Z in there. And then we'll look at it. Okay, that's something we hadn't thought about in the past. And then, we run it back through our team. So it's truly a team effort, a partnership going back and forth between ourselves, our FMC merchants, and Adrian, the end builder of the unit.
Sure. And let's have merchants weigh in on how you guys helped Ron develop this plan.
Yeah, and I'll be happy to jump on that as well. It started with just the conversations, right? We talked to Ron to understand what was working, how his fleet was currently operating, kind of what might have needed to change in order to accomplish standardization. From that, we were able to kind of review his existing fleet, the existing equipment builds, and just took his feedback along with his driver's feedback, his fleet management team feedback, and build off of the standard, trade packages, so that we built something, together that helped their day-to-day operations.
question for the group, a question for Ron and really for the group. I mean, what does that really look like specifically? Like what stuff was standardized where a tech, someone in the field was like, I need that. And you're like, well, you don't necessarily need that. You need something that's going to get there. And then they basically say, okay, I can live with that. Thank you. How did you deal with those, Ron?
Yeah, again, it was more of a collaboration from a team we put together, and we used our leadership at Turnpoint to select individuals from brands across, high performing brands from across the country that, do a great job with their employee integration, how things get done, how they track inventory. So we utilize those individuals that they helped us highlight to be part of the process and to say, hey, we understand this is the way that you've done it in the past, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the most efficient, or it doesn't need to have X, Y, or Z to let you do your job. And again, it comes down to simple things like cabinets for bottles, acetylene bottles, things like that, rather than just an open rack. Again, some of it is safety involved. Some of it is just everyday ease of use items like that.
Okay, question for Drew. How do you deal with these optional items? I mean, do they make you nervous? I mean, so many different things that are needed by the fleet. How do you deal with that, with those optional items?
Yeah, so I think if we don't look at the optional side of it, we can also kind of align on the overall what you achieve with the standard items, right? So that the entire idea of putting together the standard items that everyone's going to get, that part makes things much more seamless. It allows you to schedule vehicles for installation at a rapid rate. It allows you to really cut out a lot of the concern about delays, because that's the number one thing that folks generally run into is delays. They don't want to see their vehicles get delayed in delivery. And so what standardization does is it helps alleviate that problem. Now, where you were taking us there was that when there are a lot of optional items, we, as the upfitter, the one that's going to get all of the equipment in-house so that we can, put it on your vehicle, we don't know up front how many of each of those pieces of equipment you might need. So if we're trying to plan months in advance, if we know the OEM is going to manufacture the vehicle on, in 2.5 months, we know how much time we have to get the material in-house. But if all of that optional equipment's not secured, if we don't have the information as to what's needed there, that makes us nervous because of lead times. When it's product, it could be electronics, things like that. Any of those things, they add quite a bit of time and when you're waiting to order equipment for an upfit. So yeah, optional equipment definitely makes us a little nervous, but the beauty of the standardization process is that it allows us to, like Ron alluded to, where they have a team, they are really kind of gathering the data, what works, what doesn't. That's the same thing that our teams are doing, but we're doing it all over the place all the time. So we have engineers that are reviewing these things. We're looking at it from okay, well, what's your current practice? Are you going to the back of the van every single job and reaching in and grabbing something from a few feet back, or are you going to the side door? What are you doing every single time? And then we try to compile all that so that we can create the most efficient outfit possible. And and that starts to, once you narrow that down, a lot of those folks that are the ones that are, I have to have this, I have to have that, like Ron said, they may not know of the other ways to do it. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think there's a lot that can be said to limiting the optional items and honing down the standard.
Let's go to Charles or Matt in terms of what do fleets underestimate about order banks and production timing? who wants to jump in there?
Yeah, Matt, try to take that one, and I can kind of finish what your thoughts.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that fleets can underestimate with order banks is how quickly they can close, especially with new model years. They're closing a lot quicker than we realize. And then when it comes to production timing, it's potential delays and bottlenecks in upfitting that can come from component shortages or extended lead times on equipment.
Yeah, and what I would like to add to Matt is things can change throughout, on a weekly basis or a monthly basis based on geopolitical or things that's just going on in the world, right? So what we do is, and Drew and Ron had mentioned, is the planning part, right? Plan as early as possible. So before Ron even hits that submit button on the orders, we'll work with our OEM partners, look at all of the OEM sources like your dealer news bulletins, look at production cycles and so forth, but with the understanding that things can change, right? So we'll provide insights like, should we put specific priority codes on those orders? Or do we just need to let it rip and let those vehicles hit Adrian, and then maybe Adrian can possibly stagger orders? That all those nuances are discussed based on what it looks like that day, right? And then also flex or pivot as things change. But we do have support from our OEM, whether that's through their sources, like their publications, or based on the volume and so forth, the relationship that we built with the manufacturer. Will include them as part of the order planning and see how we need to incorporate build outs, target production weeks, and if there are any component constraints, and if we need to make any changes through the vehicle specs and so forth. So a very nuanced answer, but it's dynamic in nature, and it's done case by case. But the best thing to do is include your FMC and your Upfit partner in that order planning, and we'll embed that information with our OEM partners and see how we need to execute on orders.
And I want to follow up with that, Charles, with Ron. But first, I just want to get this question in for Ron. So what deviations are allowed in your spec? Just give us a general thumbnail on that.
We don't have a lot. I mean, there's a few I can think of is like a single or double drop down ladder rack on the vehicles, depending on regionally where that company is. Do they need an extension ladder, or are they just running A-frame ladders on the top of the vehicle? So do they need a single curbside, or do they need a double? If they're using the vehicle for an install crew versus a service crew, that will change, some of the options that we put in there as far as tanks and recovery tank racks and stuff like that. But we've kind of narrowed it down to, a basic upfit package that's also going to include, we make sure that they are set up for an iPad holder, iPhone holder, so that they can be hands-free. Bluetooth is included in the spec. Those kind of things, just to make sure that, again, we're touching on all those points, that we can make sure that our people are safe, they have the right tools for the job, and minimize the amount of changes that are running through Drew's world when it ends up in his hands.
Okay, and I wanted to get back to what Charles was saying in terms of communication. And when there's an issue, you route it. Is it best practice to route it through your FMC, i.e., merchants, instead of going directly to like Drew and Adrian?
Yeah, so everything, again, it's a true partnership. We start with merchants as far as, hey, this is the number of vehicles that we're looking at. This is the time frame that we're looking at them for, and the timing and time frame to get them is probably the most important piece. People assume that, hey, there's vehicles on a lot, I should be able to get vehicles anytime. But when you're ordering 200, 300, 400 vehicles at a time, that timing, depending where they're coming from, You know, you can be in a situation where, hey, the vehicle is built. If it's built out of country, sometimes that travel from where it's being built to the upfitter can be 6 weeks, which you definitely don't figure into that time frame. So then if it gets to, you know, the upfitter and their backlog, you know, that time frame can be, it's definitely better now than it was COVID time, but that time frame can still be, you know, in the 6 to 8 week time frame. So you need to be 4 to 5 months out, you know, on your orders to, one, make sure that your banks are open and there's availability. Again, and then shipping, whether you're doing a ship through or a ship to process, because if you're doing a ship to, which ends up at the local dealership near your brand, that vehicle, once it's done upfit, is going to go back into factory shipping, which again, you know, can take another 2 to 3 weeks. So there's a lot of potential delays. You know, we've gone through it with COVID, we've gone through it with manufacturer strikes, component suppliers, you know, whether it was chips or whatever it was. But we've kind of hit on everything in the last 4 or 5 years here. So it's definitely changed the world we live in, and knowing when you need to have orders in and the timing to be prepared.
Yeah. And to that point, Drew, I'm going to go back to you here. How early is early when it comes to ordering in today's environment?
Yeah, so early is, in our preference, it's months before you've actually placed the order for vehicles. And hopefully my volume's working a little better now. For us, we want to make sure that we are able to really look at what the lead times are on all the different equipment that could be installed in a vehicle. And so, you know, giving us the amount of time needed to make sure that we can get everything for you, that's as early as possible. I mean, obviously some vehicles, they're going to get produced, you know, we have several months, right? Like that's kind of the general gist of how they're going to produce those vehicles. But if we don't know exactly what's needed in that time frame, then it makes it more challenging at the time of production. So when a vehicle arrives, we want to be able to install it and get it out so it can get shipped. The best way to do that is for us to have an understanding of what you're going to want way in advance.
Okay, and your audio is a little bit better, but it's still a little bit of a problem there. Yeah. All right, so let's throw this out to Matt or Charles. So when plans change, they always do, right? Really, where do the costs creep in?
Excuse me. When plans change, realistically, there's a need to pivot to a faster acquisition channel. This might incur more costs, but you're going to have to weigh that against the benefit of getting a revenue generating vehicle or asset much sooner.
Yeah, just some of the costs that, you know, the fleet may need to weigh is there an interim cost component? Because, you know, you're ordering these vehicles, they're being upfitted, but there's, you know, we're as an FMC, we're paying the manufacturer for it, right? And while it sits there, it's accumulating interest costs too. So we have to weigh all of those factors, and then, as to what Matt said, evaluate the benefit versus cost, right? If we can hang tight for a few more weeks while the fleet gets that vehicle, you know, you have uniformity and so forth. But if we need to change, or if we need to pivot, what does that benefit and cost look like? And if the benefit outweighs the cost, then we'll go ahead and implement that change and get that vehicle to the branch.
Okay, great. I just want to also mention, hey, I see some of the questions coming in. We're going to get to some of the questions real soon, but please feel free to load us up with questions for our subject matter experts here. But Ron, I wanted to ask you, I mean, where did an unexpected cost come in, and how did you manage that? That really wasn't in the plan, and why?
I mean, over the last several years, we've had we've had quite a few of them, again, whether it be chip shortages. This past year, we had some vehicles being manufactured in Mexico. They got hit with a hailstorm. We had 70 plus vehicles that were already upfit, ready to go to transport to come to us, and they got totaled from hail damage. So now we have to scramble, go and find 70 plus vehicles, off the dealer lot through, strategic partnerships, again, through partnerships with our FMC and Adrian to help acquire some of those vehicles. And, when you're doing a factory order, there's discounts involved and that kind of thing that, when you're buying them off the dealer lot, and then transport on top of that, because you're not going to find, 70 some vehicles all close to an Adrian facility where you can get that done. So, I mean, that was a huge one for us just in this past year. So,
Wow.
yeah, again, there's shipping, with everything going on in the political world. There's tariffs that we had to deal with this past year with stuff coming from out of the country and all that. So again, it's there's always something keeps us on our feet and keeps us moving for sure.
Sure. And, the question for the rest of the group, actually, I mean, like, how do you deal with off the lot purchases? How do you deal with that efficiently? Because you're going to have to get that vehicle somewhere to get it upfitted. And that's, listen, it's planning, but these are the times when you can't really plan. So what's your advice to fleet managers in this webinar about, okay, listen, I'm buying from a dealer. How do I do this the most efficient way?
I can touch on that a little bit. So when you kind of look at the broad picture of locating vehicles off of dealer lots, and when you have a fleet the size of, Turn Points or any other fleets, and you kind of look at a nationwide scope, you kind of look at it where there's lead times on equipment if you need to get them upfit. So why not partner with your upfitter that has a nationwide reach, locate a vehicle where you can get it secured the fastest, and then move it towards your end destination to one of your upfitter partners who has a location near the end destination. That way you can kind of time it perfectly almost, where you transport a vehicle from a dealer lot to an upfitter, have it upfit when the equipment arrives, and you have a short trip to the end destination.
Really good points, Matt. Just a couple of more discussion points, and then we can really get to all these questions that are coming in here. Let's see. Let's talk about communication. I mean, it's structured communication. It's really important in these partnerships. I mean, and I'm going to just ask Charles that one. How do you advise fleet managers to, like, is it over communicate, or is that like too much? Any thoughts?
No, I mean, I don't think over communication is ever harmful. It's better than lack of communication, right? Because you never know what's changing as part of that order planning. So if you can over communicate, that's fine. We as FMC can coach you through that, right? And get it to the right suppliers. From a communication overall perspective, at Merchants, we have a great template where we can, depending on the project, depending on the size of the project, we can have recurring conference calls where we would invite Ron, but we know Ron's busy, so we could leave him as optional. But Drew will be a big part of that. His team, Adrian Steele and Merchant's team, will be a big part of that. So we can talk through. We can talk through from the get-go, not only from like an order planning, but after orders placed, how are things looking? Have things shifted? And as partners, we'll be transparent on the call, because you're not just getting information just from one source, you're getting it from multiple partners. And as FMC will synthesize those answers and provide to Ron, how are we looking? Are we meeting those goals? What are the exceptions and so forth? So so don't be afraid of over communicating. We as your FMC partner will help you with that.
I love the idea of the conference call. I mean, that seems like it could probably answer a whole bunch of questions in a half hour. Have you done that, Ron? Have you done the conference call with different stakeholders?
Yeah. So with our FMC with merchants, we have a weekly call, just hey, kind of a state of the union. Where are we? We're here with orders. Anything that may have come up. From a fleet management process, not necessarily with ordering or upfit, but so we do a weekly call, just a half-hour call, and then a monthly call with both merchants and Adrian, so that we're all on the same page. We kind of know, so we can say, hey, merchants knows, hey, we just ordered 200 trucks for these guys, and then Drew is on point. He knows, hey, we know we have 200 vehicles coming. What does that production timeline look like? He can give his team the heads up. Hey, they're coming out of this facility. We know that we need to bank a book of time to do these 200 vehicles. So again, it all goes back to the planning and the timing, but that communication piece is huge. And again, we try to do that with all of our partners, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. It's not like, hey, just pass it on down the line and hope by the time it gets to Drew that he's on the same page, or he understands, the same way, or the priority that we have there.
Got it. Hey, Drew, give us a mic check. Let's see what we got. Oh boy, it sounds like you're gargling something there. Underwater. It sounds like you're underwater. Hey, Charles, well, Drew brought up a point about Mexico and, delays there. And, can you help develop that? I mean, you were basically involved with Adrian and how you guys solved that.
Yeah, and I want to kind of touch base on what Ron said, right? And Ron had brought up some of the supplier concerns, especially like late last year with hail damage units and in Mexico, right? So that forced Ron to pivot, and he had to go out of stock. But what happened with Adrian is they were sitting on inventory of materials because that's what the intended destination was. It was going to go through Adrian, But because of the pivot, Adrian was sitting on his inventory, and was what Drew and his team, Adrian's team, because of the relationship, because of the partnership, they ended up shipping the material elsewhere for a turn point. And Adrian did end up eating the loss, but ultimately, because we know that there's going to be another round of turn point orders and so forth, Adrian's able to pivot and get that those material costs elsewhere, or keep that for turn point for the upcoming orders. So I just want to highlight, there's a lot of complications that can happen, but because we're trusted partners, there's cost mitigation efforts that can be made. So Ron's not stuck with those additional inventory, and he's able to pivot as needed, but also Adrian's able to partner up and figure out what can we do to lessen that burden for Ron. Sure.
Got it. I want to start in with some of these questions here. We got some good ones. I'm going to start with this first one here. And it's talking about standardization across multiple trades. I mean, Ron, let me ask you though, are you strictly HVAC, or how does the companies that you acquire do HVAC and other things?
Yeah, so we have a multitude of things. We do HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and then we have a construction side also. So those vehicles are all individual. We keep as much as we can similar. So our HVAC, plumbing, and electrical packages are very similar. The difference being the HVAC has tank racks and A2L cabinet for refrigerant. But other than that, so we do have line specific models, but they are different. Different vehicles. Our construction is a utility body, not a van. So you do need to have different models and builds, but we have, what we call standard HVAC, standard plumbing, standard electrical package for those individual lines. There is no one size fits all when it comes to the upfit world. So you have to have some variations of packages.
Right. Okay. Well, here's kind of a general question. I'll go straight to Ron with this one. I mean, how do you choose the right upfitter?
So the upfitter, that's a good one. I mean, again, it's figuring out, capacity. What is the capacity? Relationship, attending trade shows like NTEA and stuff like that to see, the different manufacturers are out there, who has the type of upfit that you need, just looking at different things, seeing what's out there in the world. It's like anything else. You could start locally, but when you get to the point where you're, doing 200 to 300, 500 vehicles and you're placing factory orders, then it becomes a new game. There are a multitude of different upfitters out there, so you just have to do your homework on them, see what quality you like. And again, the trade shows like NTEA or any of the others out there are a good spot to attend. You can see 4, 5, 6 upfitters in a day, talk with people, get some feedback from them, kind of look at the product that they have there, and then base your decision from there.
Got it. Okay. Hey, this is actually a really good one. And it speaks to autonomy of your local branches. Let's say a branch gets a really good deal on a make, model, or upfit that's kind of outside of the standardized catalog. How do you handle that? This is for Ron.
Yeah. So I mean, in our world, being that we're bringing in companies and taking on companies, they have everything and anything under the sun. They've stayed locally, buying whatever they could off the lot through COVID. So they have a mix of every manufacturer you could imagine. So yeah, we just kind of have to battle through that and cycle those out as we go through it. But yeah, again, they see different things that they like. We just bring them into the huddle and, kind of say, hey, this is our standard package. Is there anything that you need to change, and have the discussion as to why, you think that they need those pieces that they're saying are important to their business. And, either they're going to bring light to something that, hey, maybe we hadn't thought about, or, it'll strike a light in them like, you know what, maybe I don't really need that. It was convenient to have it, but for the amount of time that we use it, we probably don't need it in every vehicle.
Okay, and that does lead to this other question, which we have been discussing about convincing the field to standardize upfit specs. I mean, they want it upfit specifically to their needs. But you did make a really good point that this is a collaborative effort. We are listening to you, and you could have some valid points. John and Rick in Texas, and that will be incorporated. It's a collaborative effort, right? That continues. It's not a static thing, right, Ron?
Right. It's definitely ongoing. Again, we're in a situation now where there's a new refrigerant released last year. So all the manufacturers had to switch over. That refrigerant is stored in a different fashion. Before the tanks could be upright. These ones they were horizontal. Now they need to be upright. So the refrigerant recovery tank is also different. And the storage, it's more of a propane base. So there's potential that it could affect the driver if there was a leak. So again, we're on top of that. We want to make sure that our drivers and employees are safe, that there's no leaks or anything like that. So we're constantly looking at the upfit, is there anything new? We're going to the trade shows, seeing what new stuff is out there. Like, hey, we could incorporate that into our upfit, and, it would make us more efficient, or is that really not something that would be utilized across the company and it would be more specific to one company? So again, it's an open situation where we just try and, keep revisiting each year, each time. And, we have an open line of communication from the brands to myself and the other fleet managers, that if they see something or want to try something, we'll certainly do a pilot so that we can see what's going on there and see if it makes sense to incorporate it everywhere.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, question for Charles or Matt. What metrics should a fleet manager track to learn really if standardization is working?
I'll take that one. It would be my favorite two words: order to delivery. So that's that's the time when it arrived at Upfit to Upfit completion. That'll give you insight into how quickly things are getting turned around from an Upfit standpoint. But the other KPIs would be probably KPIs that's within the fleet. There's compliance, safety and compliance KPIs. Like, how has standardization minimized accidents, tech accidents, right? Or any type of like safety type of compliance or KPIs that the branch may have. But from an FMC perspective, the best one that we have is arrived at Upfit to Upfit completion, and how quickly vehicles were turned around because we implemented standardization.
Okay, I thought order to delivery was 3 words, but maybe two was actually number 2.
Yeah, the 2 or the hyphens.
There you go. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about. Hold on, I'm just going through these here. Here's a good one. Does the FMC have any say or help with recommending or choosing upfitters? I think I know the answer to that question, but really, it is a good it is a well, go ahead. And Matt, why don't you take this one?
Yeah, so we certainly do have some say or help when recommending or choosing an upfitter, right? We believe that the end user has a choice, right? It's their decision to make. We're here to make a suggestion or recommendation. But what we do is we present kind of the lead time metrics on equipment, turnaround time on completion. We look at the pricing, right? But the biggest thing here is turnaround to completion. A lot of the times, cost really isn't the deciding factor. It's, like Charles mentioned, his favorite 3 words, order to delivery. Fleet management companies want to order a vehicle and have it arrive completed, turnkey, and ready to go as quick as possible. So when we kind of make a recommendation for a fleet fleet to make their decision, we look at kind of performance history of the upfitter, pricing, turnaround time for completion.
What question for Ron? I mean, has there been times where you've said, listen, I hear you, but I'm going to go with this other outfitter, not the one that the FMC recommends?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Again, to Matt's point, there, and I look at it this way: they're upfitting, tens of thousands of vehicles a year, where I'm doing, 400 or 500. So they know, who's getting stuff done on time, where, is another upfitter always delayed and causing issues for them and their client. So I rely on them for that. But again, you have to go out and do your own research. The trade shows, again, are a great place to go and have conversations. I first met Drew at, one of the NTEA shows years ago, and that's what we got started. And again, we've gone with upfitters for different things and had it turn into a nightmare, and we no longer use them. So there is a process of weeding them out. But at the same time, when you're partnered with someone like merchants, they'll say, when someone comes to them and says, I want to use vendor X, they'll step in and say, hey, I'll just tell you from our experience, we have another customer that used vendor X and it didn't turn out well for them. The build to deliver time was over 9 months. I know what your time frame is to get these done. Why don't we look at something else? So again, it's a true partnership. It's not like, hey, you're ordering this stuff for me, just do what I want. If that's what you're looking for, that's fine, but it's going to end up in your lap at the end of the day. Working, through the vendors, through your FMC, is building a true relationship so that you can deliver what you need to do for your fleet.
There myself. Drew, we're going to give you another opportunity to talk about that relationship with Ron.
Yeah, to kind of speak to even the question to Ron, the choosing that upfitter and being directed one way or another, every upfitter, no matter what, there's going to be something at some point that happens. It's the nature of the industry. It could be absolutely anything. And we see delays from material being produced from companies to, sudden worldly things that happen, right? So on that perspective, to us, we look at it from a way of, how do you respond to that? How do you value and view the partnership you're in? Because if you're looking at that as a true partnership, like Ron has said a few times here, and same with the merchants team, that aspect of it means more than the moment, right? Things happen. And so we tend to look at things and go, you know what, we're just going to own that. Let's make this right so we can go on to bigger and better things for everybody. They kind of like it was brought up earlier on the with the situation what happened last year in Mexico, that we just kind of looked at and went, the smart thing here is everyone's got a little bit of pain in this, so let's just be the ones that say, you know what, we value this partnership for what it is, and let's do something better with it. And so we just moved right on and tried to help pivot to more of an out of stock situation for them. So yeah, that partnership piece of how being the upfitter and working into everything seamlessly, it's very crucial for sure.
Great. Well, and excuse me, because I look like I'm having some actual talking issues here with a bit of a cold coming on, but I just want to leave some parting thoughts here. And I do apologize. Why don't we go around the room and let's get out what we talked to in our pre-planning call. What are we missing? What did not we discuss? Parting shots. We'll start with Charles.
That's a good question. Thanks for correcting me on order to delivery. In terms of it's 3 words, I think no, it's I think I'm trying to just speed up even my words there. So no, I don't think we missed anything, Chris. I think we captured the intent of this meeting, and the things is plan early and trust in your partners.
Matt, any parting shots?
Yeah, I think just one final piece I'd like to add, right, when you're talking about standardizing specs, vehicle, and upfit, as an FMC, you should be putting boots on the ground for your clients, right? With TurnPoint specifically, we've done a handful of brand visits where we've gone across the country to different brands, and we've kind of approached them to seek the buy-in from other operating companies. And I think putting somebody in front of these operating companies goes a long way. You don't see that too often. But also when it gets to the nitty-gritty of it, request CAD drawings, 3D designs of your layouts. It gives you an idea of what you're kind of going to get in your vehicles before you make any decisions.
Yeah. On his final parting shot, but Drew, go for it. What's your parting shot here?
I would say that if you're really truly considering, standardizing, going across your entire fleet and trying to standardize, don't fear that kind of mundane term of being standard, right? Because I know there's always it's been discussed thoroughly throughout this that there's always some extra need, right? And so our job as the upfitter is to understand, listen, pay attention to those needs, and find some sort of flexibility. How do we achieve what needs to be achieved so that everybody can be served the right way? When you're standardizing, you're really looking to kind of build the gold standard configuration. It's not going to be perfect, but it should serve the entire purpose, for your fleet in general. So, I don't fear the term, because it definitely works, and standardization truly does speed up the process in the end, and it does limit costs, especially the unrealized costs that you typically see later in the process.
Okay, and Ron, as the fleet manager who's actually done this, I mean, that job of consolidation has got to be immense. Congratulations. It's still ongoing. You're still acquiring companies. But what are your final thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm sure one thing that, probably the biggest thing that I get asked all the time is, how do you decide what OEM to go with? So again, this is a huge, huge step. You have to know what your needs are. Is it a front wheel drive, rear wheel drive? Do they offer an all wheel drive option? Is a pickup 2-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive? So we have those options built in. Same van, but a rear wheel drive and all wheel drive, depending on where that company is in the country. And again, if you partner with an FMC, whoever your FMC is, ask for those direct meetings with the OEMs, and your FMC should be able to set them up for you. And then, that will begin the process of, hey, this is how many units we're looking at. And then you can start to, work your rebates and discount programs and all that kind of stuff from there. So again, partner with your FMC and build on that from that point.
I love it. Well, I want to thank all of you for joining us, and certainly Ron, Drew, and Matt, and Charles. And hey, we'll see you all in the next webinar. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you for having me.